in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's webinar. Thank you so much for coming along, even though it's been Melbourne Cup today, and I imagine there's a few sore heads around the country. But tonight we're talking about managing your property like a champ. So let's get started. So our usual disclaimer, making sure that you're aware that although we're talking about property and investing, it is general advice only, and it's always important to do your own research and ask questions along the way before making any decisions. So we'll have a quick intro to the Property Club. So who are the Property Club? The club, it's a club of like-minded people who have found a passion of investing in property and setting up for their future, a wealth of information, numerous years of experience within the club, a free club who is happy to share its resources. People often ask, well, how are people in the club paid? And that's quite simply, the club is paid by the sellers of properties. So you don't pay a cent to be a part of our club or to receive the information that you get. It's a completely free service. The club has years and years of experience in researching and sourcing the best properties. So why are you here tonight? You've all invested your time to be here. Congratulations. The purpose of our webinars are to talk to you about your future and help point out some ways to set yourself up for retirement and lifestyle choices. One of the key things that I really try to drive home when we're talking about property is that you can make a difference to your future. You just need to want to do it and seek assistance from those that can help. The Property Club are here to help you for free, so absolutely take up the service. So a little bit about us. So I'm Jenny Watson, and in the picture there you will see Justin, my husband, who's also a YIC president. We are 32 and 33 years old. We both work full-time. We have she's now 22 months old toddler, Olivia, who keeps us busy, that's for sure. We joined the club in 2009 and we became property millionaires in 2012. We became property mentors in 2016. So we had received so much from the club in terms of advice and expertise that we really thought it was time to give back, and we became property mentors. We then became the Young Investors Club ambassadors in 2016, and we became the presidents of the Young Investors Club in 2018. And throughout our story, it's important that you understand that we have average income, so we're not earning millions and millions of dollars to achieve what we have. We've just worked very, very hard and done a lot of budgeting and planning along the way. So a quick overview of our property portfolio. So we have our 2007 property we bought in Romsey. We purchased for $228,000, now worth $500K. We purchased a Property Club property in 2010 in 8 Mile Plains, purchased for $345,000, now worth $420,000. And in St Mary's, we purchased through the club again $319,000, now valued at $440,000. In 2015, purchased in Kedron, $460K, still worth $460,000. And in Midland, just last year, we purchased again through the club, $360,000, obviously still worth $360,000. So of recent months, we've been trying to tell a bit of a story with our webinars. So we've talked about the importance of thinking about your retirement. One of the key things that I really struggle with when I'm talking to people about property is I guess I'm very fearful for my friends. I think that our generation seem to believe that we're going to be okay in retirement because we'll get the pension, which the reality is there's probably not going to be a pension. So many people think I'm young, I've got plenty of time, I don't need to worry about it. but the reality is that it's inevitable. So the fact that you need to look out for your retirement as no one else is going to do it for you, and important that people understand that the action or lack of action that you take today will affect you in years to come. By waiting to take action, it's actually costing you money, and that's explained further in the previous webinars, which you can find on our Young Investors Club YouTube channel. And the sooner you invest in property, the sooner your property values increase. So tonight, let's talk about managing your property like a champ. So your investment, you've purchased an investment property, congrats. How you manage your investment moving forward can determine if your investment is successful or not. So be a champ, not a chump, when it comes to managing your property. When it comes to your property, you've got to remember that your new BFF is the tenant. Without the tenant, there is no money, and without the money, you're paying the mortgage on your own. So although a tenant is in your home borrowing it, you need them. So it's really important that you treat them as such. You need to think of them as your customer. So we'll talk about that a little bit more shortly. Organisation. So one of the key things to managing your property like a champ is organisation. For years, Justin and I were always scrambling at tax time, trying to pull in our bills, our statements, everything that we needed to complete our tax return. This was all right when we only had one property, but now that we have 5, organisation is a must. And I have to say, it's been a good thing for our marriage that we did start to get some organisation because it was always such a stressful time. Disorganisation. So being disorganised can produce many poor results. So things like forgetting to pay bills. And I can't imagine that your tenants are going to be very happy if their water's cut off because you've forgotten to pay their water bill. Bad tenants. So if you're disorganised and your tenants suffer because of it, you're less likely to attract good tenants, which means you're likely to get bad tenants. You may end up under or overclaiming at tax time, which is never good. One, because you're either going to miss out on money from the tax man, or you're going to have to potentially pay later on down the track if you're ever audited. And it can also lead to not charging enough rent. So, obviously the rent is what's helping you pay your mortgage. So it's really important that you do keep your organisation. It's a complete must. One of the best tips we can provide is to record and file as you go. I know it sounds pretty simple and straightforward, but the reality is with life, it's actually quite difficult to do that. So each time we pay a bill or our rent comes in, we enter it into our spreadsheet, which we've got a fabulous Property Club tool, which we'll talk to you about shortly, and we file it straight away. So think about what works for you in terms of filing. I've moved to an online filing system where I've got something in the cloud that I upload every single document, and it's all streamlined and it's very, very pretty and easy to find. So I'm very happy with it. And at tax time, we just simply print out our profit and loss and we give it to our accountant, which means that when we are doing our tax return, we're also paying less for it because everything's together and all the information's there for our accountant. She doesn't have to do very much at all. But being organised is just your mindset. We need to focus on the actions that you need to take. Looking after your tenants. So remembering that your tenants, now your new BFF, think about what will make their life easier within the scope of what you can manage. So make it easier for the tenant to stay in your property rather than moving out, even if you increase the rent. You can have a relationship with the tenant that it's easier for the tenant to stay, even if you are increasing your rent rather than them moving out. One of the key things we can suggest is always agree with your property manager on an amount that you automatically agree for maintenance that doesn't need your approval. So let's say the hot water system breaks down in the property, and you've agreed on a couple of $100 that you're okay for the real estate to sign off on your behalf. That means that the real estate doesn't have to wait for you to give the go-ahead to fix the issue or get someone in to have a look at it. So again, that's keeping your tenants happy, which is in the long run going to save you money and earn you more money. So get things fixed as they come up. It might be frustrating that you've got to pay for repairs, but failing to repair can cost you money. So what happens if you fail to repair? It can cost you the tenant moving out, which is obviously not what you want. It can cost you in terms of you breaching your rental agreement, so the tenant can leave without paying, which is sort of worst case scenario. Maybe it's the exhaust fan in the bathroom, which might mean that mold grows for water or exhaust issues. More expensive repairs from the original getting worse and even beyond repair. And one of the key things that I think people forget is permanent smells in hard to fix contents such as carpet and painted walls. So if you have a water issue in your property and it starts to grow mold or it's got that really damp smell, those smells get fixed into the carpet. So the only way to fix that is to replace the carpet, which ends up obviously costing you more. So how do we keep great tenants? Bad tenants cost you money. Even if you've got landlord insurance, you'll need to pay an excess to make a claim. So you really don't want to have to make a claim. Bad tenants may damage your property, they might fail to pay rent, and they may even decrease the value of your investment, or worse, even refuse to leave. So how do we attract good tenants? So some tips to attracting good tenants is keeping your rents in line with the market. We'd all love to charge $1 million for our tenants to live in our house, but we need to keep it reasonable and fair within the market to make sure that that we're fair and that we're reasonable competition with the other properties in the area. Keeping your property in good condition. Keeping a garden that's easy to maintain. As much as a fancy garden looks amazing, no one's going to want to upkeep that. So really important that it's easy to maintain, and maybe even offer for a gardener to come in. So in our 8 Mile Plains property, we actually pay a gardener every month to go in, do the weeding, do the mowing, doing all the little bits and pieces that need to be done in the garden, and we never have any issues of the garden being overgrown or anything like that because we know it's being properly cared for. Think about maybe putting an aircon in the main bedroom. So think about the different things that might make your property stand out more than everybody else's, especially if you're in a unit complex where a lot of the properties are exactly the same. What makes yours special? Why do people want to come and rent your property? That little bit of extra money at the start in doing these things, in turn, will generally earn you more money, which is the key. So maintaining good relationships with your tenants. So even though you're probably using a property manager, which you should do, you still have a relationship with your tenant, even if you're not communicating with them directly. So as maintaining good relationships, there's a few things that you can do, such as check in with your property manager if you hear that there have been storms in the area. Sometimes tenants are hesitant to call the property manager with issues because they think that the landlord might get angry or they don't want to be a bother. Whereas if you're checking in with the real estate and the real estate are checking in with them, then that means that if there are any issues, the tenant's probably more likely to feel comfortable in sharing that, which means you can get it fixed. We send our tenants a small gift at Christmas, and sometimes when they renew their lease, so if they renew for, say, 12 months, we'll often send them like a $50 JB Hi-Fi gift voucher or something as a small token of appreciation. We also send them a thank you if they're disrupted. So let's say we're looking at refinancing or doing something with our loans and we need to get a valuation done. they're obviously disrupted when the bank comes out and wants to do a valuation, so we'll often send them a thank you. So those sorts of things are what sets you apart to everybody else. So really important that you do maintain those good relationships so that you keep your good tenants and you attract your good tenants, which is obviously really important. Increasing your rent. So before you increase your rent, you need to investigate the local area to determine where your property fits. It's likely that your property manager will do this as well, but don't rely solely on them to do it for you. Sometimes property managers can get complacent and they stay with the status quo. So it's always good for you to have a fresh pair of eyes, and you can look at it from the point of view of, let's say you were looking to rent in the area, you could have a look and do some comparisons. If you have good tenants, always think about whether or not the increase will cost you the tenant. Calculate your risk. So let's say you want to put the rent up $10 a week. So that's $520 a year. And let's say the tenant says that they'll move out if you do increase it. So you need to think about how long will it be empty? How much is your advertising fee? How much rent are you missing out on while it's empty? Who's maintaining the property while there are no tenants? So who may move in, mice, spiders, etc. So all things for you to think about. And a tenant saying that they'll move out if you increase the rent is not enough for you to say, okay, well, I'm not going to do it. But you really do need to do your comparisons with the market. Legal obligations. So really important that you are aware of your legal obligations as a landlord. Now, they are different across the states. So these are some points of interest for you, but I would suggest that you talk to your property mentor about these things so that you can understand what the obligations are in the specific states that you've got your investment properties. So fire alarm testing in some states, it's an obligation that the landlord does that every 12 months, or it might be when the lease renews. So definitely check that out. Gas testing, we've all seen those horrible stories of families that are living in houses that haven't had their gas testing and the disastrous results. So have a chat to your mentor. Pool fencing, so if you've got a pool in your property, there's fencing regulations. Notice of rental increase. So the states differ as to how much notice you need to give if you want to increase your rent. So if you don't give that notice, then it means you miss out on your rental increase. So definitely check that out. Notice of eviction. So worst case scenario, you've got a bad tenant and you need to get them out. You need to have a look at what your obligations are there. And one of the newer ones across the country are the blind cords being fixed. So so we're talking about the string on roller blinds and those sorts of blinds being fixed to the wall so that children can't strangle themselves with the cord. So have a chat to your property mentor to understand what your obligations are across the states. If they don't know, they'll be able to point you in the right direction of where to find that info. Manage your property manager. So remember that the property manager works for you, okay? So make sure you set your expectations from the start. Don't be afraid to tell them what you expect. You're paying them good money to look after your property. Tell them you expect them to touch base with you 2 to 3 months before the lease expires, which means that you've then got time to think about whether or not you want to move your rents. Obtain your property inspection reports and review them. I remember back in the day when we first started renting out our properties, we'd get our inspection reports, we'd file them, we did nothing with them. And then, later on down the track, you find that there were little things along the way that led into a big thing. So it's really important that you do review them. Call them out when they're not doing their job. It's really important. Ask for receipts for repairs and maintenance. And if they're not working for you, find another manager. Okay, don't stick with the status quo. Some tips on not getting caught out. So protecting yourself. Landlord insurance. So insurance it's to protect the landlord against specific damages and out-of-pocket expenses from tenants. But remember, not all policies are made the same. So check out the Property Club Landlord Insurance, which the website's there, and we can have a look at insurance for you. I can tell you a story about a lady I used to work with who she had an investment property, and we got talking about it one day, and she told me that she didn't have landlord insurance. And I was gobsmacked. I didn't understand how someone could invest so much money into a property and not spend that few $100s every year to protect themselves. So I spoke to her about it. She went and got landlord insurance. A month later, the tenant completely removed the kitchen. So during an inspection, there was no longer a kitchen. So she was able to call on her landlord insurance, and she was ever so grateful that it had been recommended to her. So please, please, please make sure you've got landlord insurance. Body corporate. So as big as the body corporate packs are when they come in, always read your updates as they update you on what might be going on in your complex. And sometimes these things can have a factor on your tenants, and they may even impact the value of your property. So it's really, really important that you do keep up to date with those notices when they come through. You may even like to become part of the committee, which means that you can have an active say and participate in meetings and things like that. So definitely check it out. So club resources. So you're not all on your own for these things. So we have club leasing. So club leasing have the ability to multi-list so that multiple agents are working to find you a tenant. But you need to check with your property mentor how to make this happen, because there are some guidelines on what you need to do with your current property manager to make it that the club leasing can help you with multi-listing. It is a free service for club purchased properties. So any property that you've purchased in the club, you've got the availability of using club leasing. Obviously, we've spoken about the Property Club Landlord Insurance, and we've also got the Property Management Program. So this is where we put our bills, our income and all those sorts of things into, so that at tax time we've got that nice, neat little package that we can send off to our accountant. One of your key resources is your property mentor. So your property mentor's been through it all. Chat with them to talk about experiences, tips and tricks. Everything works differently for different people, so it's always a really good thing to get different ideas, tips, tricks, and even potential risks. So have a chat to your property mentor. And remember to manage your property like a champ, not a chump. So just very quickly before we finish up, we've got our Spring into Action. I mentioned to you earlier about how worried I am for my friends of this generation and what they're going to do at retirement. So this is a really good incentive that the club have come up with, which helps get the word out there and encourage people to look after their own future. So if you recommend someone to the club and they make a purchase through the club, you'll get $2,000. So that's just a reward for doing your little bit to help people set up for their future. So something to think about. Now, next month, our webinar we want to run is going to be on getting yourself prepared for the new year. So we all set New Year's resolutions, but there's so many things that you need to think about in terms of finances and investing. So we're going to talk about cleaning out our closet and preparing for the new year. But before we head off, I've got a few polls, if you don't mind, that I want to get your feedback on to help us plan for next year.